Welcome to Crash Course in Commercial Real Estate. We converted our in-house training program to a podcast to teach you prospecting, negotiation, business planning, and other fundamental skills to become a successful commercial real estate agent. And now, here's your host, Brady Collier.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining us today. I'm excited about everything that we're about to talk about. I've got Shannon here. It's the first time you're joining us. I'm Brady Collier. We're in Lubbock, Texas, and we're doing commercial real estate training with Shannon Powell, a new agent in our office. And our guest for today is Cowan, one of the most tenured agents in our office. And today we're talking about potentially one of the most important things of our entire video series, and that is prospecting. The entire act of reaching out and calling on people for new business. And so we're going to dialogue about that for probably several episodes. So I'm glad you're joining us. So Shannon, when you think about prospecting, give me some initial thoughts, whether they're from the last 6 weeks that you've been with us or whether they're your thoughts prior to getting into the real estate industry. Just tell me, when you think about prospecting, what you think about.
I think of picking up the phone and calling somebody I have no idea who they are and they don't know me, and it seems a little scary.
Is it scary?
A little bit.
Okay.
I mean, in the very small experience I've had, it's once it gets going and people are talking to you and it gets to become fun. I've noticed it's not so bad. So
yeah, over the last 6 weeks, especially as you sit and you listen to Kyle or one of the other guys, you're like, I could do that. That's not so bad. Did you think prospecting was scary when you first joined us, Kyle?
No, I did not. So my background comes from door knocking. So, I used to knock doors and go up to people's front door and knock, and they may or may not want what I have to offer. So the idea of picking up the phone was a lot less intimidating. And one thing I mentioned on an earlier podcast is it takes you a second to realize this in commercial real estate. But when you're reaching out to people, and if you have something to offer and some value to bring, they're always excited to talk about their next real estate decision. Whether they're a business owner or an investor, most people are excited on this topic.
About their next opportunity.
Right. And so if you can bring some value to them and get through those initial barriers when you're prospecting, it can be, like you said, Shannon, really fun and less burdensome and less barriers than most things you would be selling out in the marketplace.
Because most of the time when your phone rings and it's spam notice or it's somebody calling on you, they're definitely pushing some product you don't want. And so that's what shapes everybody's view of prospecting, especially the extremely negative cold calling, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. But I agree with Kyle. I do believe what we're calling them about is important to them, and we have a value proposition. And so I want to go through the basics of prospecting, and I want to start with the goal. So Kyle, do you still prospect for new business?
I do, a lot less frequently. And a lot of the prospecting now is not cold, right? It's working relationships or working deals for clients that expand and grow into other deals with existing relationships, but certainly still prospect.
And if you had to say what the goal is of your prospecting, say there's another franchisee in the brand that you represent so many of, and you're calling on them to pick up their business to get additional money, like what are your goals whenever you're thinking, okay, I need to prospect here? What's your goals? Just state it.
Yeah. So the end goal is to do a deal, to do deals with that client. Now, there are tons of micro goals that lead to that end goal. So the initial connection point is to provide value, to prove yourself an expert, to make them want to deal with you and work with you. So if I can, in my initial call, provide some sort of expertise or value to the person on the other end of the line, I've accomplished the goal of that initial call.
Yeah, and we're going to get into the value that you're creating or providing and how to do that in your own given space. But the big picture of prospecting is like that pipeline that we talked about in the former video is if you have 1 or 2 or 3 deals and your whole career, your whole income is dependent on 1 or 2 deals, then all of your emotions ride on that. But if you're prospecting a lot and you're really stuffing the pipe a lot, you're building a business. It's kind of like when people go and buy a company. If that company has 1 client, they value that company completely different than if that company has 3,000 clients, because the consistency and the risk of income is the risk of the income with 1 client only is really, really risky. It can be really profitable. It's really risky. But if you have 3,000 customers buying your products on a regular basis, you're just a less risky business. It's the same way with your business. If you have, of all of your business rests on 1 or 2 clients, that's risky. Or 1 or 2 deals, it's super risky because deals fall apart. Kyle said on a previous video that every deal falls apart 3 or 4 times, and he's just constantly putting deals back together. So the goal of prospecting is to continue stuffing the pipe just where you have lots of deals in your pipeline at any given time, where all of your income and all of your hopes don't rest on 1 or 2 deals. So that's the goal of prospecting, speaking very generally. So I want to start with, Kyle, if you can rewind in your mind to when you started in the business. What was that, 6 years ago in the real estate business? Where did you start with your prospecting?
So in my business, I knew that I was going to be specialized in retail. Oftentimes when people get in commercial real estate, they may start as a generalist. So they're gonna work a network of people that they know and have relationships with. That was not the path I took with my business. My job...
For 2 reasons. You didn't have a network of people that were valuable decision makers of real estate.
Sure. For sure.
Just because your age and your previous career and you're out of
college.
college.
Not being local to Lubbock,
right.
Not having grown up here. Yeah.
Kind of the opposite of Shannon's situation was your situation.
Right.
You didn't know much. And that was also my situation when I got in the real estate business. You didn't know anybody. And so that was one reason.
Yeah. And so not having the connections and knowing I wanted to focus on retail, I focused on finding out who the tenants were that were trying to find deals. And so we started as a development company. And so I had a relationship with a developer that wanted to do more deals. So my prospecting revolved around finding out who tenants were that were out there that wanted to find opportunity. And so that was going into databases of tenants that you can find and access to get contacts. It was going to trade shows. We'll talk about, I'm sure, beyond just phone prospecting, but going to trade shows and meeting with tenants there. But we'd get just everybody's business card that we could so we could follow up and find out who's expanding. It was looking at who's in Dallas, who's in Fort Worth, who would be next to come out to West Texas. So most of my prospecting focused on retailers initially.
Yeah, that's right. And you said
or restaurants, yeah.
And you said something there that started with your database, whether that was a database that you buy or a database that you build. There's 2 different approaches towards getting a database, and how you get the database kind of determines the quality of the information in it. If you build it yourself, you know all of the people in it, you know all their contact information. That's a great start, but it's limited in total number. So we had a start of a database, and then we bought several list of retailers, put them all in there, and Kyle just came in every day and started dialing for dollars. In those early days, how many hours were you on the phone? Prospecting.
The majority of the day. I mean, in those first 6 to 12 months, half my day was probably prospecting.
And half your day was probably 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
4 or 5 hours a day of prospecting.
And some of that's research for the calls and finding the right people, but just you sum all that together. And I didn't have active deals to work on.
He didn't have anything else to work on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well said. But for you, Shannon, I want to approach it slightly different because your stage of life, your background in Lubbock, everything is just slightly different than Kyle's. Kyle didn't have the relationships, wasn't from Lubbock, and so on. And so with you and the building, we already had a video on building your database, but I want to go back through that. I think of it as measures of separation. So the people who are absolutely closest to you that are real estate decision makers are the easiest ones for you to pick up. To get to work with on a deal, because whether or not they trust that you're able to, they love you and they're going to work with you. My very first real estate deal, my uncle gave me, and I did a great job for him. And then he and I've been doing real estate stuff together ever since. And that was 20 years ago, literally. But so friends and family is where I would start. And we've already said in your database, you're going to go through and list everybody who is a potential decision maker. And you're going to start with friends and family, which you have been doing. Going with family to meetings and going to meeting with them. And then as you do a deal and as you do more deals, I would say the next measure of separation would be past clients, because you're going to call on your past clients. What's a frequency that you think is reasonable to call on past clients? And there's
past clients
situations
that I've done commercial real estate deals
That's right.
with. You're right. If there's nothing active going on, it depends on the nature of their business and how fluid and how often changes are made. But I would say quarterly or monthly. And again, depending on you measure how often you can provide value to them, and then how likely it is that they're doing something new or different depending on who that person is.
The reason it says, are they doing something new or different, we'll give you two scenarios. You're working with somebody and it's their first restaurant location and you're helping them lease a space. What's the frequency, and this is the first time they've ever been in the restaurant business, what's the frequency you should call on that person? Well, you should go eat at their restaurant and see them every now and then, but you're not going to call on them because their next real estate decision is probably a year away, more than a year away. The opposite extreme would be some of Kyle's clients. Paint the picture of how often you should call on your past clients.
Yeah, well, see, that's why I asked if you have active deals working with them. So there's clients that I talk to every single day because of the deals we have active, and they may be a franchise of a concept where they're going to do 5 to 10 deals a year. And so in that case, the prospecting and pipeline management kind of collide. I'm prospecting new markets and new deals for them constantly while managing the pipeline of their planned growth.
Because in that situation, he's a tenant rep, and so his prospecting isn't necessarily calling on new franchisees, new restaurants. It's calling on listings and buildings out there that would meet their criteria. So that's a client. So if you get an investor who's got, who just sold a company and they've got $25 million and they don't know what to do with it, they're going to need to diversify that, some in stocks and some in this and some in this, keep some cash, buy some commodities, gold. If they're astute, they're going to set aside a portion for commercial real estate. Well, they could be somebody who you could do 5 deals a year with. And by the time you get all of their money invested, some of those first investments may need to turn over. You may need to reposition them, release them, or whatever. So that's a repeat customer that you could talk to every week, every month.
Yeah, so those are two extremes, the person that may have one restaurant and then someone that's doing 10 deals a year. I had breakfast with someone this week. It was a franchisee for one concept. We built out most of West Texas with a location in Amarillo, a couple in Lubbock, one in Midland. And then we just stayed in touch. I'd check in to see how his restaurants were doing. And he said, yeah, I'm looking at this other concept. Do you have any second generation drive-through space? And then we did the exact same thing again with this new concept that he franchised. And we've done 3 more deals. And so again, keeping those relationships warm is super important. So that's one where I kind of expected that ship had sailed. We'd done our deals, but entrepreneurs tend to find more opportunity. And if you do a good job for them and they make money off of the real estate you found them, whether as a business or as an investor, they'll want to come back to you when they come with the next idea.
The next one, so I've got friends and family, and then I've got past clients, and then I've got referral sources. So yesterday we went to that meeting. Was it yesterday, the day before? We went to that meeting, and there's 2 or 3 people around the room, and all of them are interfacing with people who are making commercial real estate decisions. And so whether that's lenders, whether that's attorneys, who would be some other referral sources that could be a decent pipeline of referrals?
Not past clients.
Past clients.
They're going to refer.
That's right. But and like attorneys have sent me quite a bit of work. Lenders have sent me work because somebody comes in and is talking to them and is thinking about making a move. Hey, so-and-so is thinking about making a real estate move. You should call on them.
Contractors.
Yeah, contractors. Sometimes people go get bids. So anybody who who is part of the process of bringing a real estate deal together, stay close to them.
Okay.
So
other brokers are good referral sources from other markets, and you may be getting to that. But
yeah, Joe on the referrals with other brokers. Joe in our office, he actually does mail outs to brokers in the NAI network all across Texas and Oklahoma, New Mexico, Louisiana, just to remind them, hey, I'm your guy in West Texas.
Okay.
So if they send out a referral, Joe's going to get it.
So I shouldn't do that. So I'm not competing with my.
No, we'll just collaborate on what are good referral sources that you need to work. And then you're just going to prospect on those every quarter and call them. And then when somebody gives you a referral, this is key. When somebody gives you a referral, and I think I may have mentioned this to you, work with that referral for 2 or 3 weeks, call that referral source and say, hey, you sent me Joe, just wanted, John, Bob, just wanted to let you know we did this and this and this. The deal's progressing. And you don't give them the client's personal information or whatever, but that way if he sees them out at a restaurant, it's not awkward like, oh, did Shannon call them? How did it go? Or whatever. So you're responsible for calling your referral sources, and that'll keep your referral sources happy, and they will keep sending you business because you take care of their people.
And what's interesting is yesterday after meeting with the banking lenders, one of them messaged me last night on Facebook Messenger and said, I've got a doctor I'm going to put you in touch with.
Perfect.
So
timing is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, apropos. And if you can build a network of people out there who send you business, you can go make 100 phone calls to get one piece of business, or just keep friendships with key people and they'll just keep sending you. They'll stuff your pipe for you, which is a way better way to live. Working the network. When I put working your social network on here, just because of your background, the school you were at, there's a lot of people there who have businesses, who have money, who are investors. And once you hit this level of competency where you can really add a lot of value to their expansion, their growth, their investments, I would not be afraid to make a list of them all and then just call on them, let them know. I know you post on Facebook and you let everybody know you're in the business, but calling them personally, say, hey, I just want to let you know I'm in the real estate business. Here's what I'm doing. I want to send you an email with my contact information if you need some real estate help. And then ask them, hey, I know you own such and such company. Are y'all growing? What's your plans? What do you think? Working those social networks.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, my social networks were so limited, and so I was so focused, but there are people and brokers that build their entire businesses off of just that, where they have relationships and people that they're connected to. And you just go from, because you hit on it, a lot of people are intimidated to just cold call prospect. So I would say most brokers start with that network, and that builds into referrals, and that's kind of the world that they live in. Don't recommend that. I think you need a prospect to really grow your business and be one of the best. You have to always grow and be willing to make those calls. But people make a great career and living off of just working their social network and referrals, for sure.
Some social networks I would be careful with. I personally don't do much, if any, commercial real estate business with people at my church. Now, everybody feels differently about this. Some people do great, serve their church, friends well. I don't talk about real estate ever at church. If somebody walks up and asks me, hey, hey, let's just meet up Monday morning and let's follow up on that, because I try to keep that social network a little bit separate from work personally, but to each his own on that one.
Yeah, I'd rather knock a stranger's door than sell anything to a friend.
Yeah.
but
then every time you sell something, it was amazing. You're like, oh, why didn't I sell that to my friend?
Yeah.
It'd be so much better off.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because my husband gave me the whole packet of all of our church members, and because there's so many business people, and he was like, you should call them and just tell them what you're doing. And I look at the packet, and every page I went through, I was like, I don't feel comfortable calling them about this right now. Like, if I see them at church and they ask me, great. But it just felt like a conflict of interest.
I don't know. I don't think it is. It has the potential to be amazing. It has the potential to be dangerous. And so you got to walk that line with a lot of discernment. Okay. And then lastly, we're going to close this episode off with the one that you started with, which is everybody's perception of prospecting, and that's cold calling. And the reality is, cold calling, it's adrenaline based, it's fun, it's exciting, and there's personality types that hate it, but those personality types just don't make it normally in commercial real estate. And I've got one episode planned where we're going to talk to a guy who does personality testing and profiling, and he says some are hunters and some are friendly farmers, and hunters do great because they enjoy the thrill of the chase, and they like calling, and that person they don't know you, they're skeptical. You've got like this window of 5 seconds to make the right impression, then they give you a minute, and if you do continue that good impression, then they'll give you a lot of time. But I find it riveting. I find it extremely exciting.
Yeah, I agree. You just don't know what you're going to find on the other side. And there's a challenge, there's walls to break down. And then, one call, just the idea of, in this business in particular, what one call can be worth, what that relationship can be worth, it is unbelievable.
And so cold calling, it's not always so cold. And so we're about to get into that. But the reason is because as you go for the next several weeks, we're going to finish out our training here in the next week or so. And then you're going to start calling people. You're going to start talking to people. And one of your friends is going to say, actually, I do need a building. I need such and such building. You're going to go look at everything on the market and there's nothing that fits. And you're going to be like, I'm going to find them the building. I'm just going to start calling up and down the street until I find it. And that's going to direct your cold calling. And at that point, whenever you call somebody and say, hey, Billy Bob, I saw that you own the real estate at 2202 22nd Street. I have a client who would like to talk to you about potentially purchasing your building. Would you be willing to talk to me about that? Well, and then you're going to get, everything's for sale for a price. But because you have something that's of interest to him, that call went from cold to lukewarm in a flash. And so almost all of your cold calling is going to be driven by some actual need, by some real estate desire. So when you call them and tell them, I have a client who you have their interest. And so that's how I like for the cold calling to be shaped by a very real need. And you're like, well, I don't have that need. Work 2 weeks and you'll have a need. Because maybe you're calling for investors. Let me just say, if you find a great investment, there's 15 people that we know that would buy that investment. So I have an investor who would like to purchase investment property. Would you be willing to sell? That's a very real need that you can cold call around. And then so that's my last.
Yeah. So with those cold calls and comparing it to other cold calling, if you're knocking doors, you're calling just through a list of phone numbers to sell some consumer product, you're going in completely blind. It's truly cold. I'm trying to find something out about them to then pivot and make a sale right away. Very rarely in our business are you going to make a call not knowing something significant about the person on the other end of the line.
You should not make a call without knowing something about the person on the other end.
So you know what they own. You're calling them because of what they own. You're calling them because who they work for. And so you can come up with something that is of interest of them before making the call because we know significant info about that person. So if they're a franchisee of whatever concept, hey, y'all don't have any locations in West Texas currently. Are y'all looking? I have a great 2,800 square foot space with a drive-through that's exactly what y'all are looking for. And whether or not you represent that space is irrelevant for that initial call.
And you already know their square footage that they need because you just looked at the square footage of their 3 spaces in Dallas. So that's something else that you're going to hit right on the head with your call. So everything you're saying in that call is hitting right in their sweet spot of what they may be looking for.
Right.
Well, it sounds like you're saying that you also need to know what's in your town, like what's on the market, doing your homework. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. Yeah, don't call, I'm looking out the window. Don't call Uncle Julio's and say, hey, I've got a location in Lubbock that I think would be a great fit. They're in Lubbock. They're at Main and Main. They're not going to do a second location in Lubbock. You should be able to figure that out before you call them.
That's right.
A better call to Uncle Julio's, again, this is completely hypothetical, is, hey, you're in Lubbock. Have you considered Amarillo? It's 2 hours north. It's a similar size market. It's the same as Lubbock in this way and this way. And there's great opportunity at this intersection. And
there's a site available at such and such. Would you be willing to look at it? Yes is the answer.
And now you've provided value. And again, you may get directed from the retailer to a broker and then you're getting cut out. And that's okay. It's building that network and it's building those relationships. Most calls you make will never result in a deal, but a lot of them can result in those relationships that are so key early on that eventually lead to deals, whether with them or with someone else.
Yeah. Now, will she face rejection on those calls?
Oh, of course.
Will some people hang up on her at times?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Will somebody eventually in her career scream at her or say something rude?
Yes.
It's all going to happen. And then you're just going to laugh and you're going to be like, on to the next one.
Yeah.
I obviously have a better life than that person because they were just rude, screaming, and hanging up on people.
Right.
So I pity them. They have a hard life. I'm about to call somebody who's probably got a great life, and the next call is going to go great. They're going to be really nice to me. And then you just got to let it go water off a duck's back whenever somebody rejects your.
Yeah. I've called dead people, like.
That didn't go well.
Yeah. Calling their family members asking for
I would
someone
like to
that's dead.
talk to Harold, and she said, "Oh, that's funny. Harold died 3 years ago," and you're like, "There's no way out of this except I'm really sorry."
Are you his heir?
Did you inherit right through it?
Yeah, I may keep going,
and I'm just like, I'm an idiot. I'm so sorry. Okay, let's close this out. As far as the people we call, we're going to roll right into the next episode and talk about when you're on those prospecting calls, what's the content of that call look like. So we're going to build on the direction that Kyle just took this. And so we're going to roll right into prospecting number 2.